In the first months of 1915, the naval war in the North Sea and the Atlantic was entering a new and uncertain phase. The German High Seas Fleet had remained largely inactive since the Battle of Heligoland Bight in August 1914 and the raid on Scarborough, Whitby and Hartlepool in December. While the surface fleet bided its time, Germany's submarines had begun to demonstrate that a new form of warfare might yield results where dreadnoughts could not. From September 1914 onwards, U-boats had inflicted successive shocks on the Royal Navy and British merchant shipping, and their effect was magnified by the limited British countermeasures available at the time. The German declaration of February 18, 1915, that the waters surrounding the British Isles were a war zone, gave further impetus to this campaign. Admiral Hugo von Pohl, commander of the High Seas Fleet, authorized submarines to attack enemy merchantmen in those waters, a step that edged Germany toward what would later be known as unrestricted submarine warfare. Officially, commanders were still expected to observe prize rules, warning merchant ships, allowing crews to abandon them, and then sinking the vessel only once lives were safeguarded. In practice, these expectations were increasingly at odds with operational realities. Surfacing to deliver a warning exposed a U-boat to armed trawlers or decoy ships, while fog or darkness made identification impossible. Many captains still made visible efforts to comply, but the boundaries of legality and necessity were already beginning to blur. Every few days, newspapers listed new sinkings. To the British public, these were numbers. To the Admiralty, they were proof that the unseen enemy had found its weapon. It was in this context that Captain Lieutenant Otto Weddigen assumed command of U-29, a modern-type U-27 submarine. Weddigen's appointment to U-29 carried immense symbolic weight. He had already achieved legendary status in Germany for his feats aboard U-9 the previous autumn. The year before, while patrolling off the Dutch coast, he had torpedoed and sunk 3 British armoured cruisers, Aboukir, Hogue and Cressy, within the span of an hour. Over 1,400 British sailors lost their lives, many of them reservists. The shock in Britain was profound. The victories electrified German public opinion and proved that submarines could overcome large warships. Weeks later, on October 15th, Weddigen struck again, sinking the cruiser HMS Hawk. These triumphs brought him the Pour le Mérite, Germany's highest military order, and transformed him into a national hero whose name was associated with the dawn of submarine warfare. His fame also carried expectations. The naval staff, conscious of U-9's dramatic success and the relative stagnation of the surface fleet, may have intended Weddigen's move to U-29 to signal a new phase. The hero of 1914 would now command a larger, more modern submarine into the decisive campaign of 1915. U-29 was a type U-27 boat, nearly a generation ahead of Weddigen's earlier command. She displaced over 650 tons on the surface, almost a third more than U-9, and carried 5 torpedo tubes instead of 4, with improved engines and greater range for Atlantic or Channel patrols. Where U-9 had been a small coastal hunter designed to strike close to home waters, U-29 was built as an ocean raider. Her longer hull gave her endurance and speed, but also made her easier to spot when surfacing to recharge batteries. For Weddigen and his crew, the new boat offered both opportunity and danger. She could roam farther and strike harder, yet she demanded precision and exposed them more fully to the elements and to enemy eyes. After a brief medical pause, Weddigen took command of U-29 in February, receiving orders to enforce the February War Zone Declaration, to interdict British trade, and, if opportunity allowed, to attack major warships. He departed occupied Ostend on March 10th to begin her patrol. The following day, off the Devon coast, she intercepted the French steamer Auguste Conseil. Weddigen followed prize rules. The ship was halted, the crew ordered into boats and then scuttled. Survivors later reported that the German commander had been courteous, even expressing regret at having to sink their vessel. A passing Danish steamer rescued the crew, and contemporary reports noted the humanity shown. That same day, U-29 also attacked the British vessel Adonwell, which was damaged but not sunk. On March 12th, Weddigen operated off the tip of Cornwall. In the course of the day, U-29 sank 3 British merchantmen. Again, he surfaced to ensure crews had time to abandon ship. For hours, U-29 even towed lifeboats to keep survivors safe until a French sailing vessel could take them aboard. The cumulative tonnage destroyed on 11 and the 12th of March approached 13,000 tons, making it one of the most effective single patrols carried out by any German submarine up to that point. The broader results of the submarine campaign that March reflected the growing pressure on British trade. Across the month, 8 German boats besides U-29 secured sinkings, together claiming nearly 90,000 tons. These losses were enough to alarm the Admiralty and raised pressing questions about how to protect shipping lanes. At this stage, however, the convoy system had not yet been adopted. The Royal Navy deployed patrol trawlers, destroyer sweeps, and increased minefields. But without effective detection equipment, defense remained largely haphazard. For Weddigen, the commercial war was not enough. After his successes in the western approaches, he set a course north toward the Orkneys and the Pentland Firth. His destination was the Grand Fleet anchorage at Scapa Flow. At this time, the waters around Britain were filled with patrols, mines, and trawlers armed with deck guns. German submarines that had once roamed the Channel almost unopposed now faced a far more organized defense. Weddigen wasn't the first to approach the area either. In November the year before, U-18 had tried to slip into Scapa Flow itself. Penetrating the defenses, she had been rammed by a patrol trawler, forced to the surface, and sunk while attempting to escape. Since then, the approaches had been fortified and closely watched, but the prize of damaging or sinking a dreadnought remained too tempting to ignore. Now, alone amid the grey northern seas, Weddigen steered toward the heart of the British Navy. By March 18th, U-29 had reached the Pentland Firth. For the Royal Navy, that day began as routine. Admiral Jellicoe had his forces spread across the Pentland and Moray Firths. The great squadrons of the Grand Fleet engaged in manoeuvres east of Scapa Flow. The divisions steamed in ordered columns. The 1st and 4th Battle Squadrons formed the northern line, the 2nd and 3rd to the south. At noon, the combined fleet was heading west-northwest in line ahead. Marlborough, flagship of the 1st Squadron, led one of the inner columns. At 12:15 p.m., lookouts on Marlborough caught sight of a sudden disturbance. A brief flash, the glint of steel breaking the surface. A periscope. The signal flags went up at once. Submarine ahead. The warning traveled down the line. Barely a minute later, the battleship Neptune, 3rd in the squadron, reported a torpedo wake streaking past her port side and vanishing astern. The shot had been fired by U-29. Positioned 18 miles east-southeast of the Firth, Weddigen had aimed at one of Jellicoe's battleships and missed. In the seconds that followed, the submarine surfaced again. Whether from a miscalculated dive or an attempt to reposition, she broke the waterline almost directly in front of HMS Dreadnought, the namesake of her class and flagship of the 4th Battle Squadron. On her bridge, the lookouts sighted the periscope and shouted the alarm. The order came instantly. "Harder starboard, full speed ahead." Dreadnought turned sharply to starboard, closing the distance in seconds. Lookouts reported the periscope and conning tower directly ahead. Ahead, U-29 was caught in the open, her slender conning tower rising as the boat tried to submerge. The distance closed too quickly for escape. The collision followed almost immediately. A column of water rose alongside the bow as it struck the submarine. Dreadnought's bow, strengthened with armor plating, struck the submarine just above the conning tower. A plume of water and oil shot skyward as the impact tore through the hull. For an instant, U-29's stern lifted high above the surface, then her bows reared out of the sea long enough for men on Dreadnought's forecastle to read the number 29. Moments later, the submarine slid beneath the waves. The entire action had lasted less than a minute. On the battleship's decks, there was no celebration. The crew watched in silence as the disturbed waters closed. No survivors appeared. All 31 men aboard U-29 went down with her. Among them, her commander, Otto Weddigen. For the fleet, the episode was over almost as soon as it began. Dreadnought had become the only battleship ever to sink a submarine by ramming. Her officers noted that 2 figures were thrown into the air as the submarine broke apart, but none were recovered. Oil and wreckage spread across the surface, carried away by the currents. Dreadnought steadied on her course, her stem dented and paint scraped by the impact, and the Grand Fleet resumed its westward maneuver. By the afternoon, the signals had confirmed the result. Enemy submarine destroyed. The position was logged east-southeast of the Pentland Firth, not far from where U-18 had been lost the previous November. At Scapa Flow, the Admiralty's communiqué went out the following day. It was brief, announcing only that a battleship had sunk a German submarine north of Scotland. The vessel was not named. Only later would Berlin acknowledge that U-29 had not returned from patrol. The destruction of U-29 brought Otto Weddigen's short but remarkable career to an end. His loss, along with the 30 men of his crew, struck Germany at a moment when its submarine campaign was only just gathering pace. For Britain, the incident offered reassurance. Scapa Flow had been threatened before. U-18 had tried and failed to penetrate the anchorage, and now U-29 had been destroyed within sight of the Orkneys. To the officers of Dreadnought, the episode was over in seconds. A torpedo missed, a sudden collision, and the sea closing over their adversary. Yet outside, observers understood the symbolism. The namesake of the battleship age had become the only capital ship ever to sink a submarine by ramming. The Admiralty reported the result with little ceremony. Germany eventually admitted the loss, acknowledging that its first great submarine commander was gone. His death served as a warning that even the most skilled officers could not escape the dangers of operating against the Grand Fleet. The wider war at sea, however, was far from decided. Submarines continued to sail from German bases, and merchantmen continued to fall prey in the Atlantic and North Sea. The brief clash in the Pentland Firth was not a fleet action, yet it closed a chapter. Weddigen and U-29 were gone, but the submarine campaign they represented was only beginning to unfold. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a like. It really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.